Hey guys, this is part 2 of solving trigonometric equations. And this is our first problem. We have tan x times cos x times sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. And our initial restriction is x has to be bigger than 0, bigger or equal to 0, and smaller than 360 degrees. So let's start off by changing tan x to sine x over cos of x, guys. And that will be multiplied out by cos of x sine of x. And then we will have minus 1 here, and then that will equal 0. Now, cos of x is below the fraction sign, so we have to make a new restriction saying that cos of x cannot equal 0. Now let's draw a cosine graph, guys. Cosine graph will look like that, and then we will go down like that, where this is 0. This will be 90 degrees, this will be 180 degrees, this will be 270 degrees, and that will be 360 degrees. Now, and this is cos of x, this is equal to 1, this is equal to negative 1, and this here is equal to 0. That was 0. Okay, now, cos of x is equal to 0 when x is equal to 90 degrees and when x is equal to 270 degrees. And since our initial restriction was smaller than 360, these two will be the values. So we can say that x cannot equal 90 degrees and 270 degrees. Alright, now let's erase that. And let's move on, guys. So we will now simplify cos of x. So that would be just become sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. Sine of x times sine of x is sine squared of x. And that's all going to equal 1 if we move the 1 to the other side. Now we have sine squared of x is equal to 1. We can square root both sides to get sine of x is equal to plus minus 1. And therefore we can say that sine of x is equal to 1, or sine of x is equal to negative 1. Okay, guys, now let's draw a sine graph. So we draw a sine graph. Sorry guys, boom, boom. Now the sine graph will look like that, and it will only go, it will only go until below 360 degrees. So that will be 0 degrees, that will be 90 degrees, that will be 180 degrees, that will be 270, and that will be 360 degrees. That will be 1, this will be 0, and this will be negative 1 as our y values. Now, sine of x is equal to 1 within our initial restriction when x is equal to 90 degrees, and sine of x is equal to negative 1 when x is equal to 270 degrees. So we can say that for this guy right here, x is equal to 90 degrees, and for this guy right here, we can say that x is equal to 270 degrees. But wait, guys, our restriction that we got here states that x cannot equal 90 degrees and x cannot equal 270 degrees. So therefore we must reject these two answers. So for this trigonometric equation, we say that there are no solutions, and that will be our answer. Alright guys, here's our second problem. We have 3 cosecant of x minus sine of x is equal to 2, and our initial restriction is right here. So let's start off by switching the cosecant x into 1 over sine of x. So 3 times 1 over sine of x minus sine of x will equal 2. Now, sine of x is below the fraction sign right here, so we have to create a new restriction saying that sine of x cannot equal 0. If sine of x cannot equal 0, let's draw a sine graph quickly. It will look like this, and sine of x will equal 0 at 0, and at this point, which will be pi, guys. That will be pi, and it will also not equal 0 at this point, which is 2 pi, but we cannot include that because it's already excluded in our initial restriction. So we can say that x cannot equal 0 and pi. So for solving trigonometric equations, guys, it's very important that you guys know how to draw these graphs of sine and cosine. Alright, so now we got these two restrictions right here. Now let's move on. So now we got 3 over sine of x minus sine of x, and then let's move the 2 to this side, so that'll be negative 2 equal to 0. Now we can multiply sine of x to all of the terms, so then this will become 3, this will become minus sine squared of x, and this will become negative 2 sine of x. And if we multiply sine of x to 0, it will just become 0, so we will have 0 here. Alright guys, now let's rewrite this equation. So we will get minus 2 sine, oh sorry guys, minus sine squared x minus 2 sine x plus 3 is equal to 0. And if we multiply, if we distribute a negative sign to all the terms, this will become sine squared of x plus 2 sine of x. Negative 3 is equal to 0. Now we can factor this quadratic equation, which will become sine of x plus 3 multiplied by sine of x minus 1, and that's going to equal 0. So therefore our sine of x has to be negative 3, or sine of x has to be 1 too, in order to make this equation into 0. Now let's draw a sine graph to finish this off. Boom. Sine graph will look like that. This will be 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. This y value will be 1, this will be 0, and that will be negative 1. Now, our sine of x graph does not go down to negative 3, so we have to reject this. But it can equal 1. It equals 1 here, and this is our restriction. So sine of x will equal 1 at pi over 2. So our x can be pi over 2. And let's check our restrictions, guys. So yeah, x cannot equal 0 and pi, but this is pi over 2, and it is within our initial restriction. So our answer to this